Today's video topic was inspired by a number of comments that I got on YouTube and TikTok in response to some of my recent videos about the publishing industry. A lot of people have started talking about the traditional publishing industry being dead. So I want to address that question today. Is it dead? Is it still a viable path for publishing? What's going on? So today I'm going to talk through 3 of the main claims that keep surfacing as part of this conversation and argument that traditional publishing is dead and giving way to hybrid and self-publishing models, and let you know what I think about each of these claims and my personal insights and take on each of them. Of course, as with all of my videos, this is just my personal opinion and my own thoughts on the current publishing landscape, and those are informed by my experience in the traditional publishing industry. I have nearly a decade of editorial experience, and that includes time at 2 of the major US publishing houses, as well as one of the leading literary agencies based in New York City, and my work as an independent editor, collaborating directly with authors who go on to pursue a variety of publishing methods, including traditional and self-publishing. So that's where I am coming from with my thoughts in this video today. And if you are new to the channel and haven't subscribed already, I definitely recommend hitting that subscribe button. Every week, I either talk about a topic related to the book publishing industry, especially in relation to the big 5 publishing houses, or I give insight into how to strengthen your manuscript draft if you are working on a book currently. And I would love to have you around. Something else really exciting that I wanted to share today before diving into the video topic is that I have created a resource specifically for all of you who are working on a book or really any story of any length. It is called the Story Self-Assessment, and the purpose of this worksheet is really to help you identify the biggest strengths of your current draft, as well as areas for improvement. Because as an editor, I know that finding those areas for improvement, as well as what you're doing well, can actually be really, really tough. So I created this self-assessment to help you do that for yourself and help you strengthen your story on your own. The link to download that is in the description below, so I highly recommend checking that out. It's also going to sign you up for my newsletter that I'm going to launch soon with exclusive resources about publishing and book writing. So now let's dive into the first claim that people are making in support of the argument that traditional publishing is dead. And that is that the rise of self-publishing has now eliminated the need for traditional publishers. So there are several examples in the mainstream book world today of self-published authors really rising to acclaim and making incredible money, having incredible sales through self-publishing. That includes Colleen Hoover, who has several books on the New York Times bestseller list, which traditionally has really been reserved for authors who publish through a major publishing house. So it's really interesting to see that you're able to get to those level of sales even with a self-publishing platform. And then if you are aware of the self-publishing industry at all, I'm sure you've heard about Brandon Sanderson's Kickstarter campaign, where he raised over $40 million at the time of filming this video to fund his next books. So there is a lot of money to be made in self-publishing. You can rise to a certain level. You can have a ton of sales. However, my question then becomes, are these 2 examples outliers of authors who have incredible platforms, who have a certain level of talent, and that is why they are able to flourish in this way? Or is it paving the way for other self-published authors who maybe aren't as established in terms of platform or aren't as established in terms of their writing talent? Frankly, I don't totally know the answer. No one does. I think the biggest roadblock that still exists when we're talking about self-publishing and hybrid publishing models is that there is still no reliable form of quality control. And that is where traditional publishing comes in to theoretically be that curator in ensuring that the stories are being published at the most polished level possible and that they are the strongest possible presentations for the mainstream audience. Of course, you can certainly argue and not even necessarily be wrong that there are many examples of self-published or hybrid published books that are better than traditionally published books, or there are traditionally published books that have typos and mistakes in them. Of course, we have all seen those. There are excellent stories that are published in every publishing avenue, self-published, hybrid published, or traditionally published. My point is really just that in the current industry, really the only way to guarantee a certain expectation of quality control is to go the traditional publishing path. Maybe if we have some more innovation in the industry and make it so that self-publishing and hybrid publishing have a bit more standardizations, so it's not so much that, anyone can kind of throw their project out there and get published, then I could see maybe traditional publishing diminishing in importance. But until there is no real curation aspect to the other publishing models, I do see there continuing to be a need and a place for traditional publishing. The other thing to keep in mind here is that traditional publishing still does have the widest distribution network relative to self-publishing and most hybrid publishing options. Traditional publishers also have media connections and coverage opportunities that are just going to be really tough to get if you are self-published or hybrid published. The bottom line here is that I truly do think there is room for both self-published and traditionally published books, and I think there will continue to be both publishing paths for the foreseeable future. And it really comes down to determining what your personal priorities are when you are making the decision of which avenue to follow. The next point that is often brought up in relation to the argument that traditional publishing is dead is that publishing houses as corporations are struggling financially and they have a really unsustainable business model. So to tackle the first part of this claim here that publishing houses are struggling financially, I was actually really surprised to learn that 2021 was a record year in terms of book sales and profits for most, if not all, of the big 5 publishing houses. So that means that, the publishing houses are actually raking in a good deal of profit, and financially they seem to be doing okay, if not good. Now, the second part of this statement about their business model being unsustainable, I can definitely see where this is coming from. The business model of publishing essentially means they invest in a large variety of books. They put out, a large number of books a year across different genres, and they don't necessarily expect all of those books to take off and sell a lot or even make the money back that they invested in them. A lot of them don't make back that money. However, whenever a major publishing house has a huge blockbuster hit like Gone Girl, then all of the sales and all of the associated money coming in from that book actually then can support the publishing house because it has just sold so well. So it's kind of this model of putting your bets out in a lot of places and then one really pays off. And while that doesn't necessarily sound like the most sound business model, it has worked for hundreds of years. I mean, if you go back to the roots of even the major publishing houses dominating the industry today, they've been around for centuries and have all kind of more or less operated in the same way. So while it can definitely ebb and flow, I don't think it's fair to say that the business model overall uniformly doesn't work. But to be fair, I am absolutely not a business analyst or a finance person in the slightest. Something else that we need to discuss in terms of business models and finances of publishing houses is that as it stands, all of those profits that I mentioned publishing houses making last year does not really seem to be trickling down to the employees and the people actually doing the work, which is a huge problem. It is now resulting in burnout. It is resulting in people being overloaded and underpaid, and people are leaving the industry, which was a topic I covered a couple of weeks ago in talking about some Twitter drama that happened in relation to several editors at major publishing houses leaving all at the same time. So the bottom line here, at least in my view, is that Yes, publishing houses have a lot of work to do in terms of correcting these systemic issues in how their corporations are functioning and how they are treating the people working for them and the authors who are getting published by them. If they are able to figure out how to retain and compensate their talent and their authors, which I do think will take some level of restructuring, maybe even dramatic restructuring, then I do think some of these issues could be alleviated and the industry would be in much better shape. So we'll have to see if these reckonings that the industry has been having in recent months and the past couple of years actually amount to anything. I hope that they do. The last claim related to traditional publishing being dead is that the mergers of major publishing conglomerates are now stifling their ability to innovate. So the big 5 publishing houses in the US are actually made up of dozens of imprints which essentially operate as smaller publishing houses within the overarching publishing house brand. And if you look back in history, many of those imprints were actually independent publishers that got bought up and merged. And so the merging aspect of the publishing industry is not a new phenomenon, but it has been gaining a lot of attention in recent years, especially with Penguin Random House's attempt to buy Simon & Schuster, which would merge 2 of the big 5 publishing houses and make them really the big 4 publishing houses. This got a lot of attention and a lot of concerns, both from people inside and outside of the industry, and that merger is still being reviewed by the Department of Justice. I have a whole other video about publishing house mergers, so I recommend checking that out for a deeper dive. But to go back to the point here about if this signals that the traditional publishing industry is dead, there is concern that with fewer publishing houses controlling the industry and ultimately fewer people at the top making those high level decisions, there will be less room for new authors and less creative risk taking because corporations are trying to reach a bottom line at the end of the day and maybe won't be able to take more risks or won't be willing to bring in new voices and new perspectives. This is absolutely a valid concern, and it is one I have heard from publishing professionals themselves who are working in the industry. In fact, there was a petition signed by a bunch of industry professionals about the Penguin Random House and Simon & Schuster merger. Literary agents as well as acquisitions editors at publishing houses don't want to have to be creatively limited or do wrong by their authors if these publishing houses merge so much that it really limits the places that books can be published and the publishers that books can be sold to. So admittedly, there's really not a clear-cut solution here. I do know that some of the corporate executives at the publishing houses have issued statements reiterating that any mergers are not going to disrupt the competition that exists in the industry for a reason, and that it's not going to result in worse pay for the authors. But frankly, we're gonna have to wait and see how this plays out. It is true that with other publishing models, particularly self-publishing, you're the only gatekeeper and you don't have to worry about pleasing anyone else or making sure that a corporation like Penguin Random House signs off on your story idea. So there is a lot of freedom in that. But hopefully the traditional publishing industry does still continue to be a place for new authors with different perspectives to bring stories to the table that the world really needs to hear. To summarize, I do think there is some level of truth in each of the statements that I went over today. I completely see why those claims are being made, and I think they're good conversations that we should be having. But I don't think that traditional publishing is dead. And I do think that it still continues to be a driving force in the book world and the media at large. I will continue to support authors who want to pursue the traditional publishing path and do everything I can to help them reach their goals. And the same goes for authors who decide, the industry is not for me, I'm going to self-publish. I want to help them reach their goals as well. Whichever publishing avenue works for you is the right one. So let me know in the comments if you are considering traditional publishing or self-publishing, or if you've published already via one of those methods. I'd love to hear, your take on this controversial topic. If you are considering traditional publishing, check out my video on the pros and cons of traditional publishing. That can maybe help you decide if this is a path that you want to go down. Another reminder to download my free story self-assessment in the description. If you're working on a story, I promise it is going to help you pinpoint your strengths and weaknesses and take it to the next level. And as always, if you found this video interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. It helps me know that you are interested in the topics we're covering and allows me to grow this community. Thanks so much for watching, and happy writing.